I'm gonna warn you ahead of time, once again. If you're looking for a cute, kawaii, non-political streamer, I ain't that bitch. If you are looking for a queer streamer who isn't afraid to speak their mind, I'm your bitch. That's me, you bitch. You girl, you gal, you good gal pal. It's me. Yep, that's me. I decided one day, live on stream, to react to some Jubilee videos. Which, if you're unaware, is a channel in which every streamer has reacted to. And, in the wheel of bigotry that I spun this week, we landed on Do All Sex Workers Think the Same? A rehashing of a video they did a long time ago that I also reacted to. So, let's take a look at what my thoughts were on some sex work apparently only issues.
To somebody in the industry, and
we watched this.
Sometimes what it does to people, it mentally can.
We watched this.
Has anything changed since 3 years ago?
The original one.
Relationship-wise.
Woo! New set, bitch! They got a brand new set. Get it, bitch! Get it! Okay. They said budget. Work.
Sex is sacred. 3, 2, 1.
Bitch, all the way on the disagree. Oh.
I believe everybody has the opportunity to choose what kind of sex they will have, how they want to have sex,
it is a follow-up
when
video.
they want to have sex, why they want to have sex. But then there's times I just want to be a dirty pig and just go out and do whatever I want, and that's not sacred.
I do think it can be, and I also think it cannot be. The connection, I think, is very important.
Yes,
so
he
it
was.
can be if you're connected to that person that way. It could be very sacred, or else you can just have sex without any emotions and just.
I'm gonna be honest. 3 years aged him a lot. COVID aged that man, and that might be rude. It is rude. But I'm a fucking clown on the internet, so really, what moral high ground do I have to stand on?
Just a more physical, awesome space.
People don't really get it. Like when I'm on set, I'm Donnie Sins. When I'm at home, I'm normal me. So when I have sex at home, there's like a connection, there's love, there's all that other stuff.
There's also not like a ring light.
What did he say his name was? Donnie
Sins.
Open up. Let me see like the penetration. You're not being told that at home. You're just going with the flow.
Oh my!
We were actually talking about this earlier, but a lot of people, they're able to separate.
Wow!
Oh
wow!
The way that people think for me in my brain.
Just don't look up his name and go to Google Images. Oh my god, I'm blushing.
My family approves of what I do.
The sex work.
Pervs, I'm supporting the industry. Fuck you. Get your fucking stupid ass out of here. I am supporting the sex work industry because I am full support of sex work. Fuck off, mate.
Do for a living. 3, 2, 1, go.
Try refreshing Granddaddy if you have like. My family approves?
They're not all for it. They still want to go back to college. They found out the first day that my first scene.
Oh, her family changed? Oh, they swapped up on her?
They're happy that I'm safe and I'm healthy and I have income.
If you ever have to preface when you're talking about your family, they're happy that I'm safe and healthy, it means they probably don't support you. Right? Like it's a sad fact of the matter.
I'm an addict. I'm sober now, but like I used to get in a lot of trouble. I was living on the street. It was a whole thing. And then the industry.
I'm sorry. The way she just brushes over that. I was an addict. I was on the street, like, you know, did some fucked up shit, but moving on. Like,
helped me create a safe space.
Sounds like there's a lot there. But yeah, let's just move on. In due time.
I would prefer if I did something else, but they're not going to hate me for doing it.
It is hard for me to
that's
find a
good.
relationship because of my job. 3,
I feel like, yeah, right?
go.
I plan to break out into the sex work industry, so this is a great thing for me to figure out. Really? Huh.
Let's start with you. Has anything changed?
Let me tell you, Donnie Sins, I seen it. It best not be hard for that man to find a relationship. But it seems like he's the only one who it is hard to find a relationship in. And that shocks me.
I was engaged to somebody in the industry, and sometimes.
Okay. Donnie Sins is having a hard day today. Maybe if you date other sex workers? Maybe. But also, maybe, like, people just don't realize it, right? Like, the sex work industry is so saturated. So unless you're like a big name, I mean, how often are you going to be found? So I guess it really might not be that difficult because, I mean, you just have to find someone who doesn't know who you are outside of it. And then just say that you're an accountant. Because no one asked about fucking accounting.
Because
I really hope he's okay. We should
sometimes
get an
it
update
does
on this. I
it
feel like most
mentally can
people would be
scar you.
upfront about what they
I'm
do.
still single.
No, no. Hard disagree. Hard disagree. Hard disagree. I know many sex workers do not say what they do up front. They always make up a job. Drag queens never say that they do drag. Because the difference between, like, sex work and, like, I think you're right for, like, regular jobs, but, like, for jobs like sex work, drag, YouTube, I know a lot of YouTubers don't say what they do. A lot of influencers don't say what they do up front. Unless they're meeting other people in the same space, is because there's just an air of, like, tabooness behind it. Or, like, there's just, you never know what you're gonna get if you say you have a unique job. So I've heard of a lot of sex workers just will not say they do sex work until they've been, like, in, like, knowing this person. A lot of drag queens do the same thing. A lot of people who have, like, unique jobs, such as sex work, drag, influencer, anything that, like, has to do with that type of stuff, will hide it and say they have a different job. But I don't think anyone reveals that type of stuff on, like, the first few dates. I know, I sure as fuck wouldn't. I wouldn't tell anyone about you idiots.
As far as relationships, I feel like the only thing that
Bitch, you
has
thought.
really changed is
I plan to go into the sex work industry.
some
And I
people
sure as
just-
fuck know that I'm not going
it
to tell
always
anyone
starts
up
off good,
front.
And then after a while, they just feel a certain type of way. So
I'll read off some popular search terms, and then you'll decide if it's problematic or not problematic. Ass to mouth. 3, 2, 1, go.
Porn is fantasy, people. Porn is fantasy.
Yeah.
Is it problematic to use ass to mouth? Well, it depends on what you mean by problematic. Yeah, if someone does it without having a clean before they do it, well, they're gonna learn the hard way.
I'll invite them to the
Oh,
Discord.
I
Please
think
don't.
It's somewhat problematic because
I'll tell you this, if I ever have a significant other, it will be at least, and I kid you not, at least a year before y'all know about them. At least a year into it before y'all know about them. Not because I don't trust you, because I don't trust that. Well, okay, I don't trust you, but I also don't trust them.
people want to do that, but like an enema.
Yeah,
With an enema.
duh.
MILF. 3.
That's not
2,
problematic.
1, go.
It's fetishy as fuck, but it's not problematic.
MILF to me is an empowerment term. It's, you know, we have a lot of ageism within our
The big thing is that I think there's a lot of problematic things in porn. Like, I'm sure they're gonna bring up the race thing, which is extremely problematic. Like, if you fetishize race, that is extremely problematic. And the racism in porn is, like, egregiously bad. It is awful. It is truly awful. But, like, for things like this, when it comes to, like, MILF, or, like, just generalized fetishes and kinks, it's, like, none of it is problematic, because if one thing's problematic, it all has to be problematic. Like, my thought process behind, like, all kinks and fetishes is it's like, okay, all of it's taboo. All of it is taboo. So why is there, like, some lines that are drawn at certain
industry, as
things?
well as a lot of
I guess if
other
that makes sense. Like,
It's not
I'm not
problematic
saying, like, for
because
you
it's
personally, because
basically
everything
saying
sexual
that
is, like, a very personal experience. But generally speaking, like, I don't understand why someone who would have, like, for example, hypothetically, you have a foot fetish. I don't understand. Some of it is problematic. Yeah, like I said, but I've explained, like, yes, I'm not saying that it's not all problematic. But I'm saying, for example, if you have, like, a foot fetish and you're judging someone with, like, a BDSM fetish, it makes no sense to me. It's all taboo. That stuff doesn't make sense. I'm obviously saying, like, the race and, like, for example, like, the pedophilia stuff and, like, that type of stuff. 110%. Like, stuff that is not acceptable under any circumstance. Like, there's a massive pedophilia issue in the porn industry. There's a massive racism in the porn industry. I'm not trying to say those things aren't there. But I am saying, for normal fucking people, normal fucking kinks, normal fucking fetishes that are, like, not harmful to others. For fetishes that are normal and are consensual, I never understand the judgment behind it, is what I was trying to say.
Tricky because I do.
Yeah, so teen's hard. Teen is very difficult because, once again, I've talked about this before, I don't have an issue with minors indulging in porn. I was a minor who indulged in porn. It helped me realize a lot of my sexual experiences without the risk of meeting a stranger. So I don't personally have an issue. And I think teen is interesting. I think teen is fine as long as it's not actual teens. I think is the big thing. And it's like people who are of fucking age. Like, I think it's okay. Because I think that, like I said, I would rather minors indulge in pornography than do something dangerous or something risky just because they don't have access. Because like I said, I was a minor who indulged in porn. It was great for me. I have really positive experiences with porn. I have really negative experiences with porn. There's a lot of stuff I had to unlearn from seeing porn, and there's a lot of stuff that I learned about myself through porn when I was a minor and I was sexually active and I didn't want to take the chance of like finding some random guy on Grindr who would like be 30 years old fucking my 16-year-old tight little pussy. Like, not something that I wanted to do, and I'm very happy that porn was a thing that I could use as an outlet. I think it's kind of tricky because it does depend, like, where do we draw our line there, right? And I think it is a hard line to draw of, like, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. I think it's hard to figure that out. And this is one of those things where I don't know where I stand. I think that, like, mainly I'm okay with the category as long as it's not actual teenagers and as long as it's, like, very clear that these are grown-ass adults doing it and that it is, like, perfectly legal and consensual.
Do fall in the teen category. A lot of men are pervy and they...
Yeah, and that's where I think it's problematic, is when you have, like, older men watching it thinking about teenagers. That's gross, and that's where the problem is.
A little bit too far, like when you want me to perform like I'm under 18, I'm not going to act like a 13-year-old
yeah,
girl. Like
100%.
Not going to happen.
When I was 18, 19, I loved the teen category because I was like, oh, people my age, this is right up my alley.
Yeah, exactly.
It can be somewhat problematic just because there are people like that, but it's also not our responsibility to regulate if somebody's going to be a creep.
But when people see teen or any of that within the porn space, immediately people go to sex trafficking. It's a little problematic because we're getting shoved again into that space of sex trafficking.
So he's not against it. He just doesn't like that there's a stigma associated, which is fair. There's a lot of stigmas associated with sex work that is not fair, such as sex trafficking. And it is kind of a hard line, right? Where it's like, you know, I personally am for the protection of sex work. I am not for the regulation of sex work because I think that that can cause a lot of harm to sex workers and put them in a lot of really harmful situations when it comes to things like authorities, when it comes to things like health insurance and stuff. There's still a lot of stigma behind it. But I am totally behind the normalizing and like making more applicable sex work, I guess.
And teenagers
or more acceptable sex work.
And, you know, which none of us want to touch any of that.
Because that's a good way to solve
COVID
that
has
issue.
affected my job. 3, 2, 1.
I couldn't say yes or no to this, really.
Sexual assault is prevalent in the industry.
I would assume
3,
yes.
2, 1, go.
I was going to say, yeah.
It's a hot topic.
There are so many stories of women, men, theys, them, tons of people who agree to one thing for a shoot and get other things they did not agree to. But because they're there, they feel as though they're obligated to do it. And before, like, anyone makes an argument, whether that be in the YouTube comments or anything, that, like, well, they agreed to do porn. Yes, but a contract that says what you are going to do and being told something different when you get there is very different and is 110% like under the guise of sexual assault and or at least a sexual misdemeanor of some sort. Sex work is something that is not regulated at all and is something that is can be as dangerous as it is profitable for the sheer fact of the tabooness behind it, the kind of you have to do certain things to get into it. A big example of this is a lot of gay porn stars talk about how it's very uncomfortable for them to have to pretend that they are straight for porn, and that a lot of porn companies like the straight guy does gay stuff first time porn because that is a huge prevalent issue in the queer community and in specifically gay spaces. There are lots of other things like that, like women not wanting to do anal but then showing up to the set and having to do anal that day because that is, for whatever reason, what the producers decided they wanted to do, and that is not okay. No matter how you put it, that is a form of sexual assault, if not at least like a sexual complacency, and more so like forcing someone to do something they don't want to do, which is under the guise of that. And it is something that is a very prevalent issue in these communities that I have heard from other porn stars in which I have like chosen to listen to, and it is a very scary fact because when you're on set and you're like, bitch, I didn't sign up to do anal, or I didn't sign up to pretend to be straight, and you've got all these producers and stuff staring at you, and you've got like other porn stars looking at you being like, let's go, let's get it done, you're kind of put in that situation where you have to do it, and it's not a fun experience by any stretch. So although they're signing up to do these sex things, we do have to recognize that there's a line between what you sign up to do sexually and what is being forced upon you sexually.
In our industry, because people want to be like, no, our industry is good. We want to protect each other. And there's such a big stigma against what we do as a job that we're almost afraid to speak up when something happens.
And that too.
To make people accept
and that too. Another thing is the guilt behind it. I'm a sex worker. Imagine the mental gymnastics. Like, it's already extremely hard for victims to kind of come to terms with what has happened to them. It's really hard for a victim to admit that they were a victim. It is so difficult. It is. And it's 110% justified because there's a lot of unjustified guilt around being a victim because society tells us that victims like are always the ones to blame, and that's just not the fact of the matter. So imagine how much, like, not harder, because I'm not trying to compare trauma here, but imagine how difficult that mental gymnastics then gets when that is your job, when basically like being assaulted, not being assaulted, but more so like the act in which you were assaulted in is your job, and that is something that you are known for and something that people follow you for. And so imagine how much difficult that must be to kind of work that mental gymnastics around of being like, oh, like, I didn't want to do this thing, and, like, I got assaulted in this situation, but, like, this is also my job. This is supposed to happen to me. Like, I couldn't even imagine how hard that must be to come to terms with. And for those who do, like, really fucking good on you, because it must be so difficult to come to terms with that type of stuff.
If they know that people are in the industry getting assaulted sometimes.
And the guilt around it must be immense.
That's probably separate from.
But sometimes I just hold it in when those situations happen until,
like I said earlier,
a female performer, she'll tell me like, oh, like I'm shooting with this person, like I'll give her the heads up. But as far as like coming out, I literally have to wait for a big name to speak up on a certain performer.
Well, especially that's another thing too, like sex in like porn specifically. I'm gonna just like let the video continue, but turn it down. Like sex in porn as like an industry is like very similar in like the influencer sphere of like, you know, there is a status of names. It's like the social status of like a name that is known is a huge deal in like these fields. And if you are like a small sex worker collaborating with a massive sex worker, like it's gotta like basically feel like you have an Owens to that big person. So if they do something to you, it must like feel really shitty because it's like, oh, you're collaborating with someone as small as me. There's a lot of guilt, and I relate to this as like someone who is like an influencer. Not an influencer, but a content creator. If I get collabs with, like, if I've ever gotten get a collab with, like, a bigger content creator, there's, like, going to be a lot of guilt there of, like, if something ever happens, that I should feel loyal because, like, you know, they gave me an opportunity, da-da-da-da.
3, 2, 1, go.
Huh.
It's not a harmless thing to be stealing porn because there's a huge
Yes.
industry that's affected.
I agree. You should always try to consume your pornography ethically. However, although I would agree with this, I do think that there is bias here for them being porn stars that obviously, and I'm not trying to devalue their craft at any point. I'm not trying to do that. However, I will say, I do think there should be readily available free pornography for the fact that those who aren't consuming it in like a taboo, sneaky way, but rather are consuming it in a, I don't have money to pay towards these porn sites. Because porn sites are not cheap. Like, they're not. A lot of them cost upwards of like $10 a month, which like you can say is cheap. But like when you have other things that you have to pay monthly, like you don't really want to, it's more so not that you don't want to support porn, but it's like, is that worth more than like, for example, like a Netflix subscription, which you will use significantly more often, right? And I do think that porn should be paid for, and I think it's valid if porn stars make their porn like copywritten and like only available on like certain websites and like try to go against all sort of piracy and stuff. But I think there should still be like readily available free porn for the fact of there are many people who I think should be able to consume porn. Another good example, minors. Minors are going to consume porn, and minors don't have the accessibility to pay for a porn website. And I think that minors shouldn't not be allowed to consume porn then. I think that that's readily unfair, and that puts minors in really dangerous situations where they can get themselves into danger or harm, depending on like who they are and depending on like what is around in that area. So I think that I'd probably be like directly in the middle of this. Granted, I'm also not a porn star, so I also am biased. They're biased in the fact that they are porn stars, and they're putting value to their craft, which I think is 110% justified. I think there should 110% be lots of porn that should only be paid for. You shouldn't pirate porn. But I also think that there is a demographic of people who cannot pay for porn and are not being assholes like he is saying. Like, there are 100% assholes who are like, porn stars don't deserve to get paid. I'm saying there are people, though, who cannot pay for porn, who would pay for porn if they could, but they don't have the accessibility to pay for porn. I will also say this also should be a conversation of, like, porn should be monetizable by views. I don't know entirely how that works. I'm not, like, in-depth in the porn industry. I think Pornhub does have a system like that where, like, certain amount of views will get you a certain amount of money, certain amount of clicks gets you a certain amount of money, etc. But I do think there should be, like, a more established, monetizable way in which you can put porn up and get paid for it, not require the viewer to, pay money to view the porn, like such as advertisements and like monetizable clicks.
We make a lot of people happy when they get that nut off. So
yes.
Y'all should pay us.
Agreed.
That's all I wanted to say.
And like you guys asked us earlier, this is art. So you paid for every piece of art. You paid for the clothing you have on. You paid for glasses. You paid for everything. So why not pay for porn? The work that it takes to do a video, I think you guys would be very surprised.
I do agree with this, but once again, how do I put it? Because I don't want to mitigate what they're saying, because I think what they're saying is 100% valid, and I'm not trying to like prove them wrong here. I'm just trying to more so. A good example of this is, I guess, like making the connection between YouTube videos. All YouTube videos are also art by that stretch, but you don't pay for YouTube videos. But the YouTube content creators still get paid, and that's, I think, the big thing that I would think would be a really good middle ground. Because I don't think that YouTubers should start making people pay. I do think that YouTubers should be getting paid for the art they are producing and for the stuff they are producing and the hard work and art in which they are putting out into the world. I think the biggest thing is it's like there just needs to be like a monetization system, I think, that allows free porn to exist and paid for porn to exist. I think both should be a thing. And I think that that is a good happy medium between those who aren't able to pay for porn.
With my child following in my footsteps. 3, 2,
They were asked this before, I think. Okay.
So I would not discourage him 100%.
I said agree.
That's interesting. It's more so the terminology he uses as discouraging him. Because, like, discouraging implies that you, like, wouldn't really want him to go into it. Not, like, I feel like he shouldn't really even be on somewhat agree. It sounds like he's more on somewhat disagree. And maybe, like, certain parts of his statement got cut. So I don't know the full connotation of, like, what he's saying. But it seems as though he is more on the somewhat disagree. Because it seems like he doesn't really want, because of the difficulties in it, and that it's more so that, like, he would hope that his kid would be able to get, like, a job in a different industry. And that, to me, sounds more like somewhat disagree than agree. And like I said, maybe some of his statements got cut. And maybe, like, he didn't get to... It's not showing his full, in-context argument towards this opinion. But it's just an interesting, because I don't know why he went there. And... I don't know. It seems like very... It's not hypocritical, but it just seems a unique view to have as someone who is in the porn industry.
Not specific. That will be a problem because I know what could possibly happen.
I was going to say, she has a very unique experience because, as she said, she has been assaulted on sets before. So I'd imagine her opinion differs from in-set person, and I was right. And I think 110% that is 100% valid. You are worried for your kid. After especially seeing what happened to you, you would worry about your child. That was a really good video. I think all of them had really good fucking takes. And I think, once again, it proves... porn stars are, like, absurdly smart. One thing I want to say in this, like, video stream, whatever the fuck, is I truly do think that, porn stars get a lot of flack. And I'm not saying they're, like, the smartest members of society, but I think they're damn close to it. I think they're damn close to it. Because they have unique knowledge that none of us do about the world and about consumerism and about, like, a lot of, like, underground issues that we couldn't even, like, care to grasp. I really do think porn stars are, like, such interesting and, like, smart individuals for the sheer fact of, like, the industry that they're in. And I love hearing porn stars just, like, talk about the industry, because there's just so much wisdom there, in my opinion. Honestly, great video.